What is up, everybody? It's House Divided on Orange Bloods Live. It's me. I'm Jeff Ketchum. I don't know if you remember me, but I do this show occasionally with a guy over there. I don't know where I'm pointing. Chad Hastings. I've got white on. He's got blue on in the event that you can't match the sound with the words. Sometimes I notice that on YouTube. I'm like, why does it look like I'm watching a bad 70s karate movie? I don't know. But anyway, nevertheless, I got to be honest. I woke up today and I was like, what should we do, Chad? Should we come up with something inventive? Should we come up with a topic that nobody else is going to come up with in the month of May, in the off season, because it's dead? And then I was like, but Chad, we could try to do that. Or, Aaron Murray said some stuff about Arch Manning and blah, 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 blah. It was like this. That was that. Like, we have a topic. Somebody said something about Arch. We get to respond. It's mid-May. If they'll only do this for us once a week for the next 8 weeks, we would be we would be thankful. By the way, we would also be thankful if you'd like, comment, subscribe to the page. It's been a minute since I've done a show. I forgot to say all of the YouTube-y things. Mm-hmm. And go into the chat, the Specs chat, and chat it up. Super chat. Honestly, the checks we receive every month from the channel, we feel them when they have the super chats.
I'm glad to know that. I'm glad to know that we're not just telling them to super chat.
Like, oh man, football season makes people drink and it makes them celebrate and it makes them donate cash.
Yeah.
In May, people are like, got a cruise to prepare for, people.
Yeah, I would just like to send a quick message out to Chris Sims, Matt Leinert, anybody out there that's doing shows, Joel Klatt, just anybody.
I double dog dare Joe Klatt to say something about Arch.
I need some Arch content at least once a week from all you guys. We will get to
Andy Staples at On 3. We're play cousins now. Yeah.
I hadn't heard it until today. We'll play it for you. We'll discuss it, everything that's there. Also, let's remind you, Texas Card House, shout out to them. They are the sponsor of the show, and they bring you Hijack Poker all around the state of Texas. HijackPoker.com. Get that app, put it on any device you want. Make sure you're doing it in Texas, or it ain't going to work. You can deposit and cash out at one of the 6 locations. You can deposit all kinds of other ways as well. Check out hijackpoker.com. So, Catch, a lot of times.
Can I tell you real quick my hijack poker story from today?
Sure.
Got my head kicked in.
Uh-oh.
I was sitting on one of these hands.
Uh-oh.
This guy limps in under the gun early in the tournament. And I raised him with ace queen suited. And he calls. And the flop comes out. And it's like 2-3 king. This guy does like an instant check. And I was like, okay, well, I raised him. I'm going to show strength. I made a pot-sized bet. He calls. And I'm like, oh. Okay. Mm-hmm. Ace comes out on the turn. And I'm like, okay. Well, either this guy hit a set of 2s or 3s, or he's got ace king and I have ace queen. And at which point, I don't know why he wouldn't have. I thought he would have played it differently. So I went all in. He called. He did hit that set of 2s on me on the flop. And that was kind of that. So sometimes people like to act like when they play online, the only time they lose, somehow they got cheated. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just lose. It sucks. Like I got knocked out of the tournament. It sucked. Yeah. But when it was over with, I was like, man, the blinds go up every 5 seconds. You gotta make your moves early in some of these free rolls, and it just wasn't my day.
If you guys want to throw in a super chat, that'll go to the top of the list.
I'm playing taps on my poker tournament from earlier. Sorry.
Like Ketch mentioned earlier, also, I like this chat. Holy the hell. It's our favorite non-enchilada softball regional superhero duo. You see what ATX Bates did there, Ketch? Did you catch the big news that happened in House Divided World while you were gone in the softball realm?
Man, the fighting Jerry Falwells took you guys out.
I never thought of Liberty as that, but yeah, I guess in a way, I didn't really think of it that way. But yes, history the wrong way for the A&M softball team, and the Texas softball team continues.
I mean, the fighting Jerry Falwells, Chad.
Yep, first time ever. The number 1 overall seed in softball has never, ever, ever lost in the regional until now.
Hey, man, sometimes you got to make history any way you can. It's like a Barnum and Bailey, right? Any publicity is good publicity kind of a thing.
In this case, I don't think that's true, but I appreciate your effort. I appreciate the attempt.
Is that what you appreciate? I somehow don't know that I believe that, but thank you for pretending. Yeah.
There you go. And hold on. Chris Bennett throwing in a Liberty Bibberty. Yep, that was the one. That was
one of my boys in high school, like hooped at Liberty.
Is that right?
And pretty sure he had to come home because they found beer in his dorm room.
Yeah, you can't do that at Liberty. Until this catch, Liberty was always the school to me that gave was it the AD at Baylor after the scandal? Yes. Isn't that where he got the chance? Liberty?
Well, my whole thing about Liberty is like, come on. Like Jerry didn't have some beer in a refrigerator in his bedroom?
I didn't realize Faldwell was a Liberty guy. I didn't realize that.
Let me look it up. I'm pretty sure he is.
Okay. See, I didn't know they had that. I didn't realize the alum list included Mr. Faldwell.
I think he started it.
Oh, not just an alum.
I think they're the fighting Jerry Faldwells.
I don't think that's the mascot name. They're the Flames, aren't they?
Which is the fighting Jerry Faldwells. Yeah. Look, the founder, Jerry Falwell Sr.
Oh, see, I didn't realize. Okay. All right. I didn't know
the chancellor is Jonathan Falwell. I'm not lying to you, Chad. Yeah. They're the fighting Falwells.
You'll forgive me for not looking up Liberty's history after they took the Aggie softball team out and made that history.
I already knew that.
You will forgive me for not double checking that history. So good on you for knowing it. All right, Kat. So let's get into this Aaron Murray thing, because you like to use the phrase "say the quiet part out loud" sometimes. And I know you were excited when you saw this one, because Aaron Murray did just that. He said the quiet part out loud on I believe it's a Sirius XM show that he was on. So I figured, thanks to our guy Tyler, our graphics guy, technical side of things, we have the clip we can play. So do you want to play it for full context, and then we can discuss?
Yes, go for it.
All right, let's do it. Here's Aaron Murray and his comments on Arch Manning.
I am not sold like so many other people are that this guy is like going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, that he's going to just be unbelievable, that he's going to be the next coming of Payne and Eli, but that's mobile. Like, I'm like, you know what? And I said this last year during the season too, because I was a big fan of Quinn Ewers heading into the season. I thought Quinn did some good stuff at times last season, but let's be honest, Texas had probably the second or third best roster in America. Probably the second or third. Why were they not competing for a national championship? It's because Quinn was holding them back. Quinn did not perform to the level that I thought he could. And then you see now in the NFL draft, I mean, he gets drafted in the 7th round. So even NFL scouts are saying like, this guy's just maybe not as good as anticipated coming out as a recruit, or maybe even 2 years ago. So all in all, Quinn Ewers had a disappointing season, and it reflected in his draft stock. If you are so good and everyone has you projected number 1 pick in the NFL draft come 2026, why in the hell are you not playing above a 7th round quarterback? If Steve Sarkisian knows what he's doing and he knows how good their roster is, which I've talked to a lot of coaches at a lot of different teams, and I asked him, like, what are the top rosters? Ohio State, Texas, probably Georgia. What it was holding them back? Quinn Ewers. Why was Arch not playing? It's like, that rubs me the wrong way a little bit. And then you watch the tape, and it looks good at times. I wouldn't say like it looks incredible. It doesn't scream first round talent to me off the back. And I'm not saying he can't get there. And I'm never going to talk bad about a quarterback because I know how difficult it is. I'm cheering for him like I cheer for every quarterback. I want them all to have success, but I need to see it first. I'm not going to crown you this all-American superstar when I haven't seen you do it. Like right now, I would have.
Well done, Aaron Murray. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. All right, Catch. There it is.
You know, the thing is, it's hard for someone to speak for 2 minutes and say a bunch of words that I'm going to sign off on completely. Aaron didn't do that. But I think for about 87% of that, I'm kind of in unison with him in that he's asking the right questions. I don't know that I would approach the same question in the exact same manner that he's asking. But I think he asks a really important set of questions that during the season last year, Texas fans weren't ready to have. They just weren't. They weren't. We were being mocked for pointing out there are flaws in the quarterback play at Texas. This is not what high-level future NFL quarterbacking, this is not what it looks like in college. And it turned into, because Texas was winning, it turned into, well, you guys are blaming Quinn for the national debt. You know, it was like, you know, the war in Ukraine. You know whose fault that is, right? Quinn Ewers. Like, it turned into these types of comments. And all we could do at that point, Chad and I, was kind of wave the white flag. On one hand, it felt like, man, there's a quarterback discussion that it is the quarterback position. What would they do on ESPN? Would they stop talking about the quarterback position? Or if it was actually really critical to like what was happening, would they really lean into the quarterback position? We did the opposite. I know you guys think, oh, you YouTube guys do is want to, we do clickbait you guys today, technically kind of a clickbait deal, but you guys think we clickbait all the time. And it's like, no, honestly, we ended up crying uncle on the Quinn Ewers discussion right about the time it was probably needed the most, because you guys were revolting in the comments that we couldn't even do shows without, oh God, not this again. And it was wild from both of our perspectives that it's like, this is really kind of important discussion. They're trying to win a national championship. They're not scoring points on offense, and we can't talk about the quarterback position without like it being a thing. So we quit, man. We just like, you know what? Honestly, we like sleeping. Chad and I both like to put our heads on pillows at night and not have angst from the shows that we've done hanging over our heads. I know you guys might think otherwise. Chad, everything that Murray says up until about the minute 55 mark on the clip are all the questions and kind of the discussion that we were having last season. And it's a fair question. The issue is, I think Aaron Murray is looking at this. He's asking this rhetorical question of sorts, but he's asking it and framing around what does it mean of Arch? And it's fair. The way that I have looked at this for months, going back to last season, probably late October, early November, when I first came out and said, I think Arch Manning should just be the starting quarterback at Texas. I think he's better than Quinn Ewers. And the only thing keeping him from kind of soaring past the Ewers benchmark as a player is just continued reps. And that if he were playing against the Vanderbilts of the world, if he were playing against the Arkansas of the world, if he were playing against, no disrespect, the Texas A&Ms of the world, you'd end up with a player sharp enough that by the time you get to the playoffs, you might be cooking with grease at the quarterback position in a way that they never did. It just never happened with Ewers. It didn't make me ask questions about Arch. It made me ask questions about the head coach and the decision maker.
Right. Yeah.
That is, to me, Murray's got his hands all over the questions.
Right. He's asking a question as if there was a competition. There was not.
He's not asking. What he's asking is, why did Sark do that?
Yeah.
And his answer in his brain right now would appear to only be, it must mean something about Arch. And in reality, it's far more nuanced and complicated than that. It centers around the loyalty towards Quinn Ewers being unofficially the guy. I think in a lot of Steve Sarkisian's worldview, Ewers is the guy that really helped turn the thing around. That they pulled him from the portal, and that was the first real building block, even more so than Kelvin Banks and some of the recruits in that 2022 class. The loyalty to that, the stubbornness of, if we quit on Ewers now, Jesus, they didn't quit on him and he went in the 7th round.
Right. But it's all, it's
Had
also.
they replaced him with Ewers, he doesn't get drafted?
Yeah. There's parts of what he's saying that are
or
just.
Would he, Chad, or would he still have gotten drafted in the 7th round? In the end, I would argue that the loyalty to Ewers meant nothing in terms of, I think they thought, we'll kill his NFL draft stock if we bench him again. Consider the regret that Sark felt after the Georgia game when he had to make the change from Ewers to Manning. Right. And then as soon as it happened, he almost went into, can we pretend that didn't happen? Can we not? Because what happened, the questions of, could that happen, got thrown back into his face, where it was like, that would never happen. And then it happened. And then it became a thing.
Right. That's the other truth of this thing when you start breaking it down. He's not a 7th round guy. Did he get drafted in the 7th round? Yes. Should he have been? I would argue no. We've gone through the list. We talked about the guys drafted. I think he should have been taken instead of guys in the 5th or other rounds, whatever. But that becomes the narrative because that's where he was drafted. So
you are what you are. Like,
right, exactly. You get, but to his question,
Tom Brady's still a 6th round draft choice. That will never change. They don't ever do a where should you have been drafted in retrospect piece.
But to me, it's just like it's a similar argument to this, Catch. Why didn't somebody beat out Brock Purdy at Iowa State? He's a 7th round quarterback. He's Mr. Irrelevant. Who was the next guy? I don't even know. Why wasn't he better than a 7th round guy? Well, because it was Brock Purdy at Iowa State. In this case, it was Quinn Ewers at Texas. He had taken him to the semis. He took him back to the semis. And when Aaron Murray says, how were they not competing for a national title? He needs to stop there. I know technically what he meant. What he meant was, why didn't you go to the championship game and win it? But let's not act like Quinn Ewers was doing
that. They went on the semifinals. They competed for a national championship.
They competed for a national title. They were driving to tie Ohio State. And if you need it, Quinn Ewers did that in Tuscaloosa, and he did that in Ann Arbor, and he did that in Fayetteville, and he did it in College Station, and he made that throw against Arizona State, and he got him to the semis, and he was driving him down. And I'm not sure who called that play on 2nd and 2 from the 2, but I don't know if it was Quinn. And I understand the last play sucked, but let's not act like the decision to play Quinn Ewers at quarterback was an unmitigated disaster. And this team went to the Who Cares Bowl. That did not happen.
Let's also not act like this offense ever scored more than 19 points in any of the biggest on offense. That's in fair. Regulation in any of the biggest games that it played this season outside of Clemson.
No, you're right. You're right.
Even against Arizona State, in Jerry world, it took special teams. It was even against Arizona State, the offense didn't perform at a national elite level trying to score points. And if you go back and you say, well, what were the biggest games of the season? You go, well, Ohio State, Arizona State, Clemson, A&M, the 2 Georgia games. Now we're up to 6.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody would argue that. Now you might throw Oklahoma in there next, maybe Michigan next, but I would say that those 6, of those 6, Texas scored more than 19 points once.
Right. And
so I'm like way in, but I'm nowhere near Aaron Murray level of like, the thing that was holding them back was just this. That's unfair for all of the reasons that you outlined. Because ultimately we are talking about the 5th best quarterback of the Texas Longhorns modern football era, that his sin is that he's not Colt or he's not Vince. And maybe he's not quite James Brown. Maybe, I don't know. Like this is, we get into he's in there with the James Browns and the Sam Ellingers of the world. And then it's beauty is the eye of the beholder in terms of what order you would want to slot those guys in. But that's really good. It's an incredibly good college football player.
Yeah.
But there's no getting around the fact that the offense didn't perform against the best teams at a high enough level. It is the thing that ultimately cost them a chance to win a national championship. I think this is really complicated.
Yeah.
Because I think, Chad, if Steve Sarkisian felt like, let me go to Earl Thomas on this, okay? When Earl Thomas was a freshman at Texas in 2007, he redshirted. But everybody knew that if Earl Thomas was good enough, he was not ever going to stay 5 years. That was a dude that was ready to go to the NFL the moment 2009 started, and he started doing Earl Thomas things. So then it was like, well, why in the hell did they redshirt him as a freshman? You can't tell me. Earl Thomas blindfolded with one foot tied to the other is still better than anybody that Texas rolled out in the secondary in 2007. And I say that with all due respect to guys that played in the league. It's Earl Thomas. If he doesn't have a brain meltdown, he's probably a future NFL Hall of Famer. I just don't know if the way that the end of his career is going to overshadow all of the amazing stuff that he did. He's one of the 5 best football players I've ever seen. And when he left after 2009, it was like, God, he left after 3 years, and they knew that. So why not play him on special teams? Why not find a way, Earl Thomas, to get as much out of him as possible? Because he's never playing 4 years. And the idea that you would redshirt him in hopes that he would stay a 5th year, bananas. Well, the reason why I bring all that up is when it comes to Arch Manning, the Manning people behind the scenes have said, and let's go through these one by one. They said they're not going to transfer. Should Quinn Ewers come back from another year, they're not just looking to run. They're okay. They're patient. That turned out to be true. They've said from the beginning that they want him to start 2 seasons worth of college football games before he would depart for the NFL. Texas so confidently believes that, and it has been maintained so much over and over again on the side of the Manning side, that Chad had absolutely implicated the decision-making process from last year. Because there gets to be a point where you have to make that decision. And you go, well, if we go deep into the playoffs, and then we play 16 games or 17 games in 2025, he would then be at like 25 or 26 starts.
And that's their number.
And that's the number they want.
Right.
But if you go with Quinn, and then you stay with Quinn, you get Arch in 2026. If he played 17 games, how many starts would that have? 19. Is that what they want? It's not what they said they want. They want to hit like 2 dozen.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like the quarterbacks that hit that number, it's like a magic number. When they hit that number, those are the guys that end up going on to have the success in the NFL the way they hope Arch would have the kind of success. It's why you see ESPN talking about Arch Manning as the number 1 pick in the 2026 draft. And everybody here locally is like, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But that only is certified as much as it could possibly be certified, because if Arch Manning and Texas win a national championship in 2025 and he's the Heisman winner, do not tell me that there is a tough decision that needs to be made. Because
you mean do not tell you there's not a tough decision to be made.
Whatever that right way of phrasing that is, where we do not pretend as if there wouldn't at least be a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
Is just foolishness in my, however you phrase it, that it ends with, if we do that, it's not foolish, or it is foolish. You guys know what I'm saying. So I think when we look back to the thing that Aaron Murray is talking about, it's not about doubting Arch. It's about not wanting to quit on Quinn and knowing the potential implications for what it would mean should that happen for a guy who otherwise is one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the program. And it was banking on, this is what the Mannings have told me. Do I feel like I can trust that? 1,000%. So I'll lean in. If they thought the clock is ticking on Arch Manning and he's out of here for the 2026 draft, the same way Quinn Ewers was always talking about the next draft as if, you're damn right, I'm out of here as soon as I'm draft eligible. It didn't quite work out that way, but we thought when he arrived that he was 2 seasons and gone. Then he comes back for a 3rd season. And then even after the 3rd season, the question was, should he transfer? Should he go someplace else? Should he go pro? If you were treating Arch the same way that you were thinking the Quinn thing was going to go, then you think, okay, well, after 2025, if he's as good as we think he is, he's probably going to go pro, because that's what 90% of the guys would do, right? I think it completely changes the decision that's made this season. I think Arch Manning becomes the starting quarterback in the 2024 season in November if the coaches actually thought he might leave after this season. The fact that they really believe in their heart of hearts, in their souls, Chad, that he's going to stay through the 2026 season, allowed them to not have to make the tough call at quarterback. But it's a fair question to ask. Did not making that call for a guy that you think will eventually be the number 1 pick in an NFL draft so that you can stay loyal to a guy, and I don't care where you think he should have gone, Chad, the NFL, you know what he was? Quinn Ewers was that watch in Trading Places where he's like, this thing tells the temperature in 7 different countries, and you can, in Philadelphia is $50 or $50, I think is what he technically says. Quinn's a 7th round pick. 7th round pick. That's what he is and what he was. And I think that will, if Texas wins the national championship in the next 2 seasons behind Arch, you won't think twice about it. But if any meat gets left on the bone in the next couple of seasons and Texas doesn't quite get there, and Arch does turn out to be the guy that everybody thinks he's going to become outside of maybe Aaron Murray, you're going to play the what-if game in 2024 forever, knowing how close they were. And the Arch bullet you left in the chamber, that's a hard one to replicate, isn't it? That there aren't many times in the history of college football where the thought is that guy was just waiting. I mean, it really happens less. Chad, can you think of it in the history of, I mean, maybe it's in the NFL where a guy like Mahomes, I don't know, if Mahomes plays as a freshman, does it, or as a rookie, does it, there are only so many times in history where a player of significant magnitude wasn't already on the field.
Right.
I honestly don't know the example of this team wins the national. Even the best example I can give from a Texas side is probably Earl Thomas. But it's like, well, what do I think that meant for 2007? Well, they won double-digit games. They beat Arizona State in the Holiday Bowl. Does it mean that they absolutely beat Oklahoma that year? And that was a back and forth. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the two names that pop in my head are guys that were following legends, which is not exactly what we'd be discussing here, but like Steve Young coming up behind Joe and Aaron Rodgers coming up behind Favre are two guys I could think of, but they're coming up behind big dog. I mean, big dogs. One of them,
It's a hell of a thing to say. Well, what if you took Montana off the field?
Right. That's the thing. That's a different discussion a little, but those are the two that popped in my head.
What was the other one?
Aaron Rodgers. Like, you knew there was a feeling for the people that really knew football, like, no, man, if that guy was out there, he'd be badass. Now, is he more badass than Montana, or is he more badass than Favre? I'm not quite sure, but he's a starter in this league. That's what I'm telling you.
Do you remember the first exposure to Aaron Rodgers? I remember it like yesterday. I can, if you don't, when I tell you the specifics, you'll remember.
Do you mean the pro exposure, or do you mean the Mac Brown
thing?
The
pro exposure.
Oh, okay. Because I remember the Mac Brown drama. That was fun in college. I don't remember the first pro exposure, no.
Well, the Cowboys were pretty dope in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
If you'll remember, that was the 13-3 year.
Yeah, I remember how it ended.
And there's a moment where they get the Packers. I think it was a Monday night game, but it was one of those like national spot. It might have been, God, I think it was a Thursday.
Okay.
I think they had a Thursday game against the Packers. Favre was the starter. The Cowboys the Cowboys won that game going away. It was one of their best performances in that season. But they knocked Favre out of the game, and Aaron Rodgers comes in. And it's the first time that Aaron Rodgers has really ever played in an NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking, oh, it's time to tee off on the young quarterback with what was legitimately a great team. That was the best Cowboys team of the last 30 years, as far as I'm concerned. And Aaron Rodgers lit our ass up. Didn't know. All I knew was that they were supposed to get worse with Brett Favre not playing, and suddenly Aaron Rodgers came on the field, and it was like, wait a minute, we can't stop the Packers all of a sudden. And you didn't. Now, all these years later, it's like, oh yeah, because arguably in his prime, the best quarterback that ever lived, like at their apex, Rodgers had that. But even then, I don't think you'd say would change the outcome of that Packers team. It maybe accelerates the Rodgers curve in a way that would happen with Manning, right? Where, and you would say that about Steve Young as well, that he just needed reps. And the more reps he got, the more he became Steve Young, the MVP, and not the other version of that. That's the thing we won't know with Arch. And it'll be unfair to watch the game in Columbus, Chad, in August, which is a weird thing to say, but it is August 31st. We'll watch that game, and if he goes for 330 and 3 touchdowns and Texas wins, there will be an instinct to say they didn't have that's who they could have had somewhere along the line in 2024. What if that version starts in that game? And I don't think that's fair. That wouldn't be anything that I would do, but it will give you an idea of what was possible, that this guy's on his ascent. And the more he was, whenever eventually it happens, and we now believe it starting at the beginning of the 2025 season, we'll see this occur, but it was always going to be a case of like just him getting enough reps that the game slows down for him. And we won't know that about him yet going into Columbus, if that's even happened yet, because he doesn't have the learned experience of actual game time where that's happened. The one thing that I always maintained last year was I don't think any of those games were losable games for the most part, that there's no game that Texas played after Georgia that I think was losable, really, by switching the quarterback. That you could switch the quarterback, and I don't think the dynamics change. I think they still beat Arkansas the way they beat Arkansas. Another game where the offense didn't exactly tear it up. They scored 17 against A&M. There's only so much we can hype up about the performance levels of the Texas offense, and could that have been replicated? I think yes, that at a minimum, knowing what we know Texas didn't do offensively against the good teams, I feel confident in saying that Arch could have done not 20 points a game. Like, he could have done that, but you would have invested in the familiarity and the experience that would benefit you in August 31st of this season. But it also might mean you don't have him available for 2026. It's a complicated Arch Manning web that Sark has been weaving, because there's what ifs at every corner.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's a whole lot of them. There's also a few super chats that are piling up a little bit, and we will get to those right after I tell you about a little bit of vodka. Deep Eddy Vodka Tasting Room. We're talking to you on a Wednesday. Thursday through Sunday is when they are open. Go get those great cocktails. Go get a little pineapple. That's the brand new flavor for you right there. There's now 9 flavors of Deep Eddy Vodka. Get on out there, see what they're mixing up with the cocktails out at the tasting room, and make sure you get some of that great barbecue too. The Crimson Creek Smokehouse barbecue is awesome to go with it. Go enjoy some, make sure you get some good spring weather. We got a little bit of that. It's getting a little warm, but they got plenty of good inside seating as well. Deep Eddy Vodka Tasting Room. Check them out when you get an opportunity. All right, let's check out these super chats. There's another one that came in that
Super
we
chats.
need.
Let's have
That we need to mark. All right, let's go in order here. ATX Bates with a $4.99. I wonder how much the Manning family not wanting to put Arch in the position to have bad play on film, i.e. playing too soon before he is drafted. Well, that wouldn't have had anything to do with last year, though, right?
I mean, he's waited longer than any quarterback of his pedigree ever has in the history of college football.
And they all agreed to it. Like, everybody agreed to it. The family.
It's amazing.
It is. And that now, there's only one more ingredient. It's the fans. The fans have to deal with this because everybody, the only hiccup, think about this. The only hiccup in this whole thing was Sark against Georgia the first time. That was it. He's the only one that blinked. Nobody else blinked. Quinn never said anything stupid.
It's amazing to think that
Arch never did anything dumb. Now, if somebody asked Arch moving forward, hey, Arch, if you'd have played in 24, would you have won the national title? If he smarts off, that might not be.
I think this thing was harder behind the scenes on Ewers.
Yes, no doubt.
He ever will could admit.
I totally agree.
He did a masterful job of managing that pressure because, man, nobody will know, maybe of the Major Applewhite, and maybe even Major doesn't know to this degree what it means to walk in those shoes. I don't nitpick Quinn at all. Like, I really think I can only imagine, and I know how difficult it was. All things considered, I thought he was masterful in the ways that he dealt with what it meant to be that guy in front of Arch.
Yeah, and even when Sark had the little hiccup moment, he admitted he didn't say he did it because he thought Arch was a better quarterback. He said he did it to calm Quinn down, and then he put him back in, and he never went back. He never went back to that decision again. So to me, the whole thing for Aaron Murray is like, dude, you are talking about the wrong guy. Wrong guy. I kind of disagree with what you're saying about Arch himself, because he is kind of taking not a shot, but it's like, I don't know that he's going to be that good. And I'm not sure. It's like, okay, well, that's one discussion, but you're not having the real discussion. And the real discussion is the coaching decision that was there. I did like this one real quick before we get another super chat. Mike G, Aaron Murray's about 2 years late to the conversation. And Mike, he's not having quite the right conversation.
But you know what? But Mike, I'm glad he's late to the conversation because we weren't able to really have this conversation. I'm telling you, there's like a real conversation to be had about Quinn Ewers' career and what he was doing last season. And I tried to have it. And like I was told I hated Quinn Ewers, not as a player, personally. That happened.
But it's because that you have to bake in the truth of what was happening. And that's what Aaron Murray wasn't privy to and wasn't talking about.
But
like
the things that led to him getting drafted in the 7th round were things that some people were trying to have conversations about. And what I'm saying is it gets brought up now. We can talk about it now because like the sensitivity of it all. Hell, if we'd done this the week before the draft, people were still convinced that Quinn was going to go in the 1st round.
I know. No, yeah, the distance is helping. And now this part, the fact that it is now stamped in as a 7th round pick, it does fire the conversation back up. Thank you, Aaron Murray. If I didn't say thank you enough earlier on.
Hey, late can be best sometimes. And in this case, I would just tell you that there's an alternative universe that exists right now where it's May 21st. And Chad and I are doing a show together. We are not happy that we didn't have a topic involving Arch Manning to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. Barb's 10, $4.99 super chat. Man, CTE hits at any age. Oh, come on. Not competing doesn't get you to back-to-back semis. Quinn was not coach / play caller or defender. Team game, clickbait hero. There you go. That's part of it. Barb's 10. That's part of it. But it's also fair to talk about what Ketch mentioned earlier and what Aaron Murray did throw out. At times, Quinn wasn't good enough. But it is fair to say he was good enough to get them back to the semis. And that game was super close.
Quinn's insanely complicated to talk about because of his high school ranking.
Right.
If Quinn was just a regular old 4-star guy with a recruiting profile similar to Gunnar Stockton, the way we would talk about him is insanely different. But when you are rated what he was rated, you know, you can never run from it. It is always part of the way people will define you. And, you know, and Quinn had a rare career that when it was over with, it just feels like the whole damn thing lives inside the gray area. Well, it's not black and it's not white. It is always textures of both of those colors. And, you know, I'm fascinated by the whole thing. Like it's still a little bit of us talking about this in real time. We don't even know what Arch is going to do, Chad.
Well, here's the other thing. I think in our minds, we love to play. When you play the game of if you could change something, it's like if you're a Texas fan, are you saying that every single good play would have still happened and Arch would have just covered the bad plays? Like if we get down to that moment and Cam Williams is still banged up and they don't replace him and he still gets beat and Sawyer still gets to the quarterback, does it really matter who the quarterback is? Like if we make that guy
2025 team best situated to make a run at a national championship this year if you played the best quarterback last year? Like Arch will go into Columbus. There are still questions. He's not started on the road. He's not started against a ranked team. You know, there's like for as many firsts that the Ohio State quarterback situation will be making the same day. But the investment into 2025, you are better situated in 2025.
Right.
If you make that move in 2024.
True. And then there's two other things. You got to deal with Quinn Ewers transferring and you don't get 2026. So if you're willing to make that trade, then you make that trade. But to your point,
it's crazy to think though that this decision was mostly made on 2 seasons from when the most important decision was defining how we would remember a season.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Jay Lee, one of our favorites. What's up, Jay? $5 super chat. Catch, who do you expect to be 1 through 5 when the new team talent composite comes out later this summer? And where will OU be? Jay threw us a question. Yeah, when Alex was sitting in about the composite, and I didn't know exactly what he was talking about here.
24/7 will come out with their blue chip scale, blue chip percentage. Man, I like the guys at 24/7, but I have to admit, I hate the way that they view talent. Because when they talk about blue chip talent, they talk about guys that are ranked number 350 in the nation, the same as they do a guy that's ranked 20th in the nation, and they're just not the same things. So, for instance, Oklahoma, I think, had a higher blue chip percentage than Texas did a year ago based on the raw volume of numbers that get counted into the equation. But if you looked at their super blue chip numbers, the elite of the elite talent pieces in recruiting, Oklahoma's way, way down, much more so than the blue chip percentage would indicate. So I'm not a big fan of the blue chip percentage. It does mostly hold water. I just don't like fundamentally how they get to their number, even if their data does point to these are the teams. Oklahoma's actually kind of probably a wild exception along with A&M. Who do I think? Look, I think my super blue chip rankings are better than their blue chip rankings, if I don't mind tooting my own horn. The top 5, when that is updated this weekend, it's one of the things I'm working on right now.
Teaser.
Chad, you didn't know that when you asked the question, but I'm working on updating my own super blue chip metrics. Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, 1, 2, 3, Alabama 4, Oregon 5. Those are the 5 programs with the highest super blue chip rates, including in the portal. And the portal is really stingy.
Say the 5 again.
Really highly in the portal to qualify, probably as you should.
Say the 5. Say the 5 again.
And you can rank the top 3. The top 3 are Georgia, Ohio State, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ohio State actually is 1 spot in front of Georgia, but I haven't done – that's off of memory from a few months ago, and that could easily have changed. In fact, I think Georgia will have a couple more and so will Ohio State. They both have added some guys in the portal that might give them a bump up. And then Oregon and Alabama. And then there's a real drop off between 1, 2, and 3, 4 and 5 are kind of their own tier, and then everything after that is substantial.
All right, and to defend me and Alex Dunlap, we guessed 4 out of the 5, so that's exciting.
Who was the one that you left out? You know who's close is A&M.
We actually put Alex threw Penn State out there, and we
not
forgot
even close.
We forgot about Bama and tried to stick Penn State up there. So, Jay, thank you.
Penn State won't be in the top 10.
Gotcha. Oh, well, that just breaks my heart. You know how much of a Penn State fan I am. ATX Bates, $5 super chat. No one questions that Peyton was a better quarterback at Tennessee, but T. Martin won the national championship. So why wasn't T starting over Peyton? Come on, Bates. What are you doing? We're going to go back to the late 90s and do this? That is true. It is true. Peyton did not win the title at Tennessee, and T. Martin did win the title at Tennessee.
Well, it's a little bit like
that's funny.
The 2005 national championship team for Texas really is the national championship that Chris Sims' recruitment brought. That Sims was the guy, along with Corey Redden in that 99 class, that made it cool to go to Texas again.
Yeah, started that talent build.
And when Vince in that 2002 class came, Chris's career wasn't over yet.
Right.
So they were still riding the wave of what Sims and Redding's arrival meant. And so you can't have the 2002 class without the 99 class. And Sims's historical imprint. And I will say, we may look back in a few years, and that may be Quinn's biggest contribution, is we may look back at this and say, would Texas have gotten Arch without the presence of Quinn? And in reality, it was the presence of Quinn that Arch and his family liked a lot, so much so they were willing to risk he could come back for a second year, at which point we would have to wait till our 3rd year to start. That didn't scare them off, whereas that would have scared off a lot of other guys. The fact that Quinn existed, the Mannings always felt like that will allow Arch to transition into college without, from day one, the weight of the world being on his shoulders. Mm-hmm. And if Texas does win a national championship under Arch, you'll seriously be able to look at Quinn, I think, the same way 20 plus years later, I look at Chris, which is, man, he never did it. And he never really got close to what everybody thought he was going to be. But without him, the history of Texas football changes forever in a worse way. And that may be, I think, ultimately Quinn Ewers' biggest imprint on Texas is that he really did serve as like an ignition switch for what this thing is becoming. And the fact that he wasn't good enough to lead them there himself does have some Chris Sims tentacles to it. But I say kind of the same thing about Quinn that I said about Chris when he left. Pretty damn good football player that in the end, nobody would say that that guy wasn't good. It just comes down to a question of how good you eventually thought he became. And we'll probably argue about that with Quinn like we still argue about it with Chris Sims 20 years later. He never was at a level wherever there could be a consensus about just how good he was. And that's kind of the territory that Quinn landed in. And it's, you know, it's where most players it's the rare guy that's so goddamn good, Chad.
Yeah.
That everybody, even the opposition goes, well, he was pretty sensational. And it, you know, you think about like Aggie quarterbacks, we're talking like Johnny Manziel, and that's probably it. You know, there's always so many guys everywhere that fall into the category of so good that nobody questions whether or not they were really good. And, you know, that's what Arch has to be. That is the level that he's expected to reach. And it's the level, unfortunately for Quinn, if Quinn had just had a little bit more modest of expectations, if he had just been a 5-star, but not the number 1 5-star of all 5 stars, I really don't even think we'd look at where he got drafted as some cardinal sin. It's only a sin when the expectation is you're going to go number 1 overall, and then you end up going in the 7th round, and it does make all of the projections look like they were massive disasters, even if his play on the field and all of the accomplishments that he gathered would indicate he was far from a disaster. It's complicated.
Thank you guys for these super chats. We got a couple more we are going to get to real quick. Let me talk about sinus and snoring specialists. And I still can't get this one number out of my head. 127. Alex Dunlap was on the show this week and said he has a friend that had 127 instances per hour where he stopped breathing in terms of sleep apnea. That's insane. I've never heard of anything that high. My number was up in the 30s. That's bad enough. My wife's number was in the 60s. That's really bad. That's severe level. I don't even know what they call 127. But if you're having those issues, snoring, sleep apnea, you know you're keeping yourself up. You're waking yourself up. You're keeping your bed partner up, and they're worried about you. Get it looked at. Get it taken care of. This is the place that can do it. 601-0303. Text them or call them securely on that number, or go to sinussnoringent.com. I went in there in 2017, and I have not regretted it for one day after that. It might be CPAP for you. It might be a different path. There are a lot of options. Check them out. You'll meet Dr. Slaughter, and y'all can start talking about what works for you. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. That's what they say at Sinus and Snoring Specialists. And let me tell you, you will. All right. Let's get back to some super chats. Couple more that were in there. And there's one from Max. $4.99. Literally, the red zone woes have been the primary reason why we didn't have at least one ring within the last 2 years. Well,
maybe.
Maybe. Got to get to the title game and play it, but sure.
They weren't better than Michigan. So I
don't know. That's the one I don't know. That Michigan team's always going to have that blinking asterisk to me. I just don't know.
I think Michigan would have caved Texas's head in. If I'm being completely, you got to remember that was not a good Texas defense.
That's fair, but I'm not sure. But yeah,
now this year's team. Look, I stand by the notion that when held, look, that was a Texas. No, they don't. Texas doesn't get the grace of, hey man, how might that offense have looked if Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden were healthy?
Sure. How about if Cam Williams stays healthy that whole game too?
I mean, and look, that's not me saying that Ohio State wasn't a worthy champion. They obviously were. I just don't think that Texas takes they, with a lesser version of their best self, were within a yard of having that game tied late in the fourth quarter. And then we find out if anybody's, puckers up. But they made the plays. Like, I give Ohio State all the credit, but the margins are so thin that when we talk about this quarterback thing, the margins of where if Arch is even a little bit better in a game like that one might have made the difference between beating Ohio State and not. It's funny because I have a buy or sell question coming up involving just this exact conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This decision was made on the idea and the notion that Texas could have its cake and eat it too, that they could finish the Ewers thing without him being embarrassed, and then still having 2 full years of Manning starting that you could bank on. If any of that is a little unsettled, the whole thing to me looks wildly different. But the fact that such a key decision was made on 2026, again, if we get to 2026 and there is no Arch in 2026,
oh, geez. Well,
then it was a really poor decision in retrospect, given that the way we know it played out was Texas doesn't really make it to a national championship game, and Quinn doesn't perform at a level, even in staying committed to him, that I can make a case that if Quinn gets benched after Georgia, stay with me, Chad. If he gets benched against Georgia and Arch takes over, and then Arch becomes the next Tua, I can make a case that Quinn could still go into the NFL draft and might get drafted higher than the 7th round. That it was all of the games from the Georgia game on. Those are the games that really turned NFL scouts against him. They looked at that body of work and went, no, that we're good. And if the sample size had been limited to, God, the last time we even saw him on the field was Michigan. That was the last time he was healthy. Yeah. Look what he did against Michigan and 5-star pedigree. He might go several rounds higher. That in the end, oddly, the leaning into the commitment to him probably did him more damage. It couldn't have been worse. Because if you make the switch to Arch in November or October of last year, nationally, that thing gets treated like, well, you weren't going to be able to hold it. It's not an insult.
Right, because you knew what was coming on the schedule.
Quinn's like the only guy in the country that has somebody behind him with such a pedigree that losing the job wouldn't be seen as. It's a little bit like when Jalen Hurts lost the job to Tua.
Right.
Nobody then went, well, the reigning SEC Offensive Player of the Year sucks. No.
Right. And that was obviously that had some difference because it was in the title game, but they'd given you like tastes of it.
Exactly.
Right. There'd been some moments. That one felt like Saban was ready to go with Tua if something went down.
It always felt like Tua was eventually going to be the guy. And it was but can Jalen Hurts hold on long enough to keep him off of it?
Right. But that is not the feeling we got from Sark. Right up to that week of the Georgia game where he called out a media member for asking such a stupid question about Arch maybe taking over. And that's the week he did it for that long. And then it went the other way, and then it turned. So it was a little bit slightly different.
Do you think the Georgia benching, do you think that had do you think that cost him a round? Or is the totality of his experience such that they didn't overcook the grits on the first Georgia performance?
I just think I think it's a total of everything. Because like you said, they're going to go back. The nerds in the NFL and all those they're going back and they're watching SEC title against Georgia. SEC title game there.
Imagine how bad it was that they just couldn't fall in love with the Michigan game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they were watching the 2 Georgia games. They watched the Ohio State game, and then they were seeing inconsistencies.
I thought somebody would see that Michigan game and convince themselves he was hurt. He was never healthy.
I did too.
And he can do that.
Yeah. I have again, there's 5. There's 13 guys went ahead of him. 6 of them I can make an argument for. The other 7 I cannot. I don't understand it. but I'm not an NFL expert. They are, and they all looked at it and it was like, nope, Chad, you don't know what you're talking about. We're taking Will Howard.
When they all do it leads me to believe that there's a quiet thing about Quinn that just never is not being said. And I hate to say that because I don't know what it is.
I don't either, because Riley Leonard went
when they all make the same move, the same pass, there's something there. And you know what ends up happening is we all know that it's something there, but because he's our guy, it's like, oh, can't be. They just got it wrong. And you invent these reasons and circumstances that had to exist to explain this thing when it's like, man, most times in life, the answer's there. Yeah. It's just that sometimes it's uncomfortable enough that the most comfortable thing to do is to just never acknowledge it. I don't know what it is because I don't know. You know, like I never heard when Quinn was here, you know, early in his career, first off season, there was the Quinn doesn't put enough studying into his craft. But that was not anything that ever was repeated after really the summer before his first year as a starter. That, you know, no one ever questioned his commitment, that he was always a guy that put the time in. And it makes the Gruden thing, the film evaluation thing that they did, where it's like, oh my God, this guy's a rock star on the chalkboard. You would think if he was, that would have elevated him. Like there's an answer that in a couple of years from now, it will be widely known. It will get out. Somebody eventually will just say, this is why it happened. Bam. But, you know, because look, Isaiah Bond didn't get drafted. Well, why didn't he get drafted? Now, we can hem and haw all we want to. We know why he didn't get drafted. There's a reason why Quinn went in the 7th round. We're just blind with regards to really holding on to what was it and why can't we just accept whatever that is, that's the reality. I don't know.
I don't either. I can't wait till Riley Leonard and Graham Mertz show us exactly why. I'm looking really forward to that moment where I'll feel stupid. Barb's 10, $4.99 super chat, same quarterback circumstance. If Arch had a G on his chest instead of the Longhorn, would Murray have crowned him? But he's got us talking, so mission accomplished. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I don't know if it would matter if he was at Georgia.
I will say, though, Aaron Murray, from what I can gather, is not a guy that's viewed as a Longhorn hater. In fact, some of the commentary that was discussed on Orange Bloods, he was actually quite complimentary of Quinn during his career. And so I don't think he was going for clickbait. I really don't. I think he asks fair questions.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty measured question. Barb's, I didn't take it as any kind of hatred. I did like
Barb's. He's asking the right question. He's just, in our opinions, framing it in the wrong way.
And this is a good example. Here's a good chat. DJ said, the whole premise of this episode is what I've been saying. If Arch was better than Quinn, he would have been the starter over Quinn. Hang on, DJ. Hang on. Because you're essentially laying out what Murray did. And that's what we're just trying to say. It's a little more complex than that. Let me put this up one more time. Here's what he said. If you're so good, why in the hell are you not playing above a 7th round quarterback?
The answer is 2026.
Exactly. But the answer also has to involve Steve Sarkisian. He's asking that question, Catch, as if there was a competition. There was not. If we sit Steve Sarkisian down and break everything down and say, all right, coach, who's the better quarterback? He might tell us Arch. But that's not why he made that decision. The decision was made. Quinn was the guy. And there was these other things, the family, Arch, 2 full seasons after. They laid all of that out. So that's what Aaron Murray is missing. And he ends up taking a weird shot at Arch Manning without needing to. It's like, well, he couldn't beat out a 7th round pick. He never got the opportunity, Aaron. There was no moment where Steve Sarkisian said, guys, I'm going to give both of you the same opportunity to win this job. That's not what he said last spring and summer. It's not even close.
I wonder. All right, I'm going to say something that might get me in trouble.
Okay.
But One of the things that did happen, like we're just having this Quinn conversation in the NFL and everything. It's fascinating that I do remember that after the week of the benching against Georgia, there was some real concern about how behind the scenes, there were some real concerns about how well he had handled that. I was told that it crushed him.
Yeah,
now,
I wouldn't doubt it.
He came out and responded well on the field. So I think he deserves a huge attaboy for that, because in the week leading up, what was the game directly after the Georgia game? Because he played really well statistically.
Yeah, I would have to look it up.
But the week of that game, there was some real concern that, man, maybe that does him in. That for everything that was being said, there was concern that when the game hits, if he's as mentally scrambled as
it was Vandy.
Yes. And
at Vandy.
And that was an interesting performance, actually.
Yeah, 3-point win.
But there was some thought that, man, that might be the game where he loses the job forever. There was some real concern that, that game starts off. Remember, Texas goes up 21-7. First quarter, touchdown, 3 touchdown passes. And Texas is in a groove. And it was like, okay, he's responded. And then what happened to the offense the rest of that game? It bogged down. It never got in the end zone again after scoring, midway through the second quarter, if I'm remembering how that went, right? It was the DeAndre Moore touchdown pass was the third that he threw. I think that's right. That's the one that put him up 21-7. And they scored 3 points in the third quarter. I think maybe 3 points in the fourth quarter. But the offense never then gets in the end zone again.
Correct.
I wonder if those things had been flipped and the third and the fourth quarter had gone in the first and the second quarter. I wonder what Sark does. If instead of 21-7 Texas, it's 10-6 Texas at halftime of that game. I don't know, because the talk going into that game was everybody's got to keep an eye on Ewers.
Yeah, right.
He might not be right. And, again, he responded. He came out in that game on fire. But even in the end, it becomes one of those games that, Ewers ends up with 3 touchdowns, but he also had 2 picks and took 4 sacks in that game. And we didn't walk out of that saying to ourselves, what a quintessential Quinn Ewers performance. And yet you would say they wouldn't have won it without the 3 touchdown passes he made late in the game. He makes a couple of plays that kind of save the second half performance. What do they, I don't know. Again, I'm glad that Aaron Murray did this because it gave us a reason to kind of have we couldn't have this conversation even before the draft because people are still too sensitive about it. But now,
right. And again, once that moment happened and whatever the reason is, once he fell that far, now you really have again, it's the thing Aaron Murray staring right at it wait a second, a 7th round guy? And you couldn't, he's looking at it the most simplistic way possible, but it does get you into a pretty wild conversation. And again, it's something Texas fans are going to have to figure out how to process, Catch, especially if 25 and 26 do not result in a national title. Yeah. If that happens, then there's this whole other thing. Because then they'll go back and say, wait a second, if you'd played Arch Manning with that talent, you had all that talent one time, and you didn't play the best quarterback, that's what'll happen if there's not a natty one of these next 2 years.
Well, what if in 2025 we get an Arch Manning that we eventually come down to he's close. He's close, but he's not. Right. No, I get where he doesn't have the glow. And then we'll say,
I know where you're going. Yeah.
Had they made that investment in 2024, look, you think about the Vince Young experience. The light switch comes on when for you, Chad? You're as able as much as anybody to be a Vince Young historian.
The light switch for Vince comes on in 2004.
Where though in the season?
God, is it the Kansas game? Like, is it there or is it somewhere in 2004?
It's post OU, right? Because
I don't know. Yes, post OU. I mean, that Kansas game is one that pops in my head. It's sometime in that, that mid to late. Obviously, it can't be OU because that was the 12-0 loss. But yeah, somewhere after that moment is where you started to think, all right, the badass is a badass.
Well, and you go back to that, like Texas had to pay some dues with Vince.
Oh yeah.
And by the end of 2004, he had the glow against Michigan.
Right. Whereas at the end of 2003, he was holding on to his jersey on the sideline, just looking
crestfallen, right? It was
down,
about
crushed.
So, now the 2004 season ends in historical fashion in that they go to a major bowl game, which was their first, right? Like
how far after the OU game is the Kansas game?
Well, the Kansas game's later in November. The historical game.
It's all the way to the end. Okay.
Well, the game that is historically remembered as a turning point moment is the Missouri game after the Oklahoma game in 2004. Right. They got shut out. It's the very next week. And there was some calling for, should Chance Mock be the starter? Should Vince be moved to wide receiver? Vince was, I think, questioning himself a little bit. And there was an infamous meeting that happens the week of the Missouri game where Greg Davis and Vince Young have kind of a meeting. And Vince Young's like, man, you got to trust me. Let me be me. And Greg Davis is like, that's exactly what we're going to do. And then from that moment on, you start to see the acceleration of Vince. And it gets to, eventually we get to the Michigan game, and it starts to feel like he's Superman. But you point out the Kansas game. He certainly had a little bit of that vibe that day as well. The way that it ends. But, they beat the crap out of Oklahoma State, 56-35. The game before that. And that's one of the most famous Texas home games in history.
Yeah, isn't that that's the comeback game, right?
That's the comeback game where in the second half, the stadium literally felt like it was about to spontaneously combust.
Yeah, that was an insane crowd.
They went on a 42-0 run.
Yeah.
In the second half after falling behind 35-7 with a minute to go in the second quarter.
And the crowd never gave up on them. Mac always talked about the crowd cheered them off the field and to end the first half because they got a touchdown like really late. I think that gave them a little you felt some momentum. They were getting dump trucked at one point, but they scored that touchdown. Crowd never, ever gave up. And then you're right. In the second half, DKR felt like it was going to come apart.
So I bring this up because we go back to the best career of any player that any of our, like, with all due respect to even Johnny Manziel, Vince Young's the best football player I've ever seen. I have to believe that even Manziel's like a notch below that for a guy who would have cheered more for Johnny Manziel than maybe any player. Like, we're talking about just rarefied air. But if I tell you that the light switch occurs somewhere in November of 2004, somewhere in that Oklahoma State, Kansas, go into the A&M game, and then you're Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
It happens there. But all of that can't happen without the shutout to Oklahoma, without whatever we think that 2003 season was once Vince took over as the starter. But, God, it required that ugly Washington State game, and it required, getting benched and Chance Mock having to come in and quarterback the Texas Tech game. And, there were continued growing pains. But you had to use that investing in the growing pains to eventually get to a point where over the course of 2 seasons, you got 1 1/3 truly special quarterback play. That's what Vince Young was. For 1 1/3 season or 1 1/4, he's the best football player some of us have ever laid our eyes on. But you can't get to that, Vince, without the season and a half that they invested in him from 2003 up until November of 2004. And I just wondered, is Arch going to be robbed of the ability to be the best version of 2025 that he can be because he wasn't given the reins in 2024 to put the foundation in place so that you have no questions in 2025? And is getting a national, and the answer, Chad, to this question may be yes, is getting to a national semifinal appearance enough to justify the decision to not make that investment?
Probably not.
You don't think so? I was thinking maybe it is.
I'm assuming a Texas fan would tell me it needs to go one step further at least. It needs to get to the title game, probably.
Okay.
But I also think, to play devil's advocate, I could argue also that Arch Manning will get to take advantage of something. Forget about the individual talent for a second. We'll get to that. He gets to take advantage of something that Vince Young did not, and that is a clear message in the locker room, a clear message among the coaches.
Yeah, that's fair.
Not only that, but we could argue that whatever rough spots there are for Arch Manning, his rough spots might be a little more polished at this point than Vince's were at the same point. So I could make that argument as well because, I mean, my God, some of the stories that have come out during that time period where, again, you just said it, the offensive coordinator had to meet with the quarterback and the quarterback had to say, you got to trust me and all that kind of stuff. I just don't sense that Sark and Arch are ever going to have that moment of, hey, you're just not letting me be me. I think Sark's going to be good with letting Arch be Arch. It's just that he's good with it on August 30th of 2025 for whatever that's worth.
You ready to play buy or sell?
I am ready. I tell you what, let's hit him with a little specs first, and then we'll do buy or sell. Remember to get stocked up at Specs.
Shop Specs! It's time to celebrate. Over 10,000 wines to appreciate. 300 beers, savings and cheers. Let's raise a glass to the next 60 years. Specs, wine, spirits, and finer foods. World-class service, that's all about you. Shop Specs! It's how we do. A huge selection since 62. Shop Specs! Low priced, amazing. Here's to you.
All righty. It is just about time for a little buy or sell. Catch, you want to go first or second?
I'll go first today.
All righty.
Buy or sell number 1. Texas beats Ohio State last January if Arch had been the starting quarterback all season.
I will sell that. There's way too many things. I'll play butterfly effect, and I can't just assume that everything good still happens. It's so complicated. So I'll sell. I think it's a lot more complicated.
I'm going to throw kerosene on the fire and say buy.
Yeah.
Buy or sell number 2. Texas A&M has to make a head coaching change in baseball after the 2025 disaster, which I didn't add in the wording right there, which also follows the 2025 A&M softball disaster.
You're throwing the softball in there.
I'm throwing kerosene on all the questions.
Man, it's tough. It's funny. My dad and I had this exact conversation last time I saw him. Catch, before the Missouri thing, I might have sold. I think now it might need to be a buy. Like, considering where they were, the start is one thing. Writing yourself a little bit is one thing. But, man, that Missouri sweep might have been the thing to really, really force consideration there. So I'm going to buy it.
Buy or sell number 3. The tush push lives. Green Bay's motion to make the play illegal failed, and you think the league needs to suck it up and learn how to stop the play and quit acting like a bunch of bitches.
I'm going to lean into the old man football side of me, and I'm going to say buy. But I'm also going to say this. Is there that big a difference between pushing and pulling? If we can push, why can't we pull? No pulling? What about pulling? Why do I sound like Seinfeld? I don't know.
I was wondering, why do you sound like Seinfeld?
There's nothing wrong with pulling. We can push. Why can't we pull? In the end, Catch, that's where I live on this play. You and I root for a team that's in the division with the Eagles. Does it suck when they run that play all the time and they're successful? Yeah. But there's not one moment I've ever watched it and I thought, oh, that's so unfair. I can't believe it. The only thing I would say, if you want to make it like only one player can push and multiple players, maybe, but I don't think that's where you need to focus your attention. You need to focus your attention on first, second, and third down and play better defense. That's my ultimate gut. So there you go. Tush push lives on, and I do love that it was Green Bay that tried to stop it.
Green Bay with a frozen tundra. Like, come on, guys.
Right. You're with that class. It's like if the Steelers did that. Come on. What are you doing?
How many times have I watched Bart Starr sneak that ball in from the one on a field where the players literally couldn't get traction because they were playing on ice? Like, come on.
Right. With the false start. I've
seen that play so much. It's like,
yeah.
You know what? For all my life, I've had to just swallow it up and let my ancestors, my Cowboy fan ancestors, just have to watch that thing. And it's like, no, y'all gonna suffer too. We suffer.
By the way, Catch, your whole life when you saw that play, did you see the false start before the guy admitted it, or did you miss it? Because I never saw it until he admitted it.
I mean, you can see it.
Yeah, I never caught that little detail, but I saw the interview and I'm like, wait, there was and I went and watched it. And as a Cowboys fan, I'm freaking out. How did they miss it?
No, believe me, I have ancestral fans who passed that down from one family member to the next. Buy or sell number 4. OKC handled the T-Wolves with relative ease in game 1. You think this thing will be over in 6 or less?
I will buy that. Especially with this Anthony Edwards thing. I know he's Mr. Flexible Ankle and it always comes back, but that one felt a little different last night. Plus, Oklahoma City is so damn smooth, so damn good. They're getting in the lane a lot better than Minnesota through one game. I'll trust that they keep doing it. I'll trust in the mid-game, the mid-range for SGA. And you went 6 or less. So if you'd said 5 or less, it would have been maybe a little different. But 6 or less, I'll definitely buy.
Excuse me. And finally, buy or sell number 5. George Wentz, rest in peace, Norm, was a better character on Cheers than Kelsey Grammer's Frasier, but not better than John Ratzenberger's Cliff. Sorry.
Interesting. So Norm was a better character on Cheers than Frasier, but not better than John.
I'm just trying to get an idea of your Cheers power ranking.
Yeah, that's really an interesting way to look at it, because I was thinking of similar conversations too. Those side characters that end up being so legendary and iconic, and that show just had like a bushel of them. So many side characters.
All 3 of these guys are like pretty historically noted.
Yeah, because I can make an argument. You can make a Frasier argument to put him at the top because they made a whole damn show out of it.
I mean, how many
TV
side characters, when they die, get the treatment that Went got yesterday?
Oh, I know.
It doesn't happen a ton.
Yeah. And then that's the question. Is it going to be more for like when Ratzenberger dies? Will people feel that more or less than Norm? Norm's a little more of a mascot-y kind of character.
I mean,
I think than Cliff, right?
There's only one Norm. Like everybody knows that,
because of the yell. But Cliff did more in the show in terms of the character. Okay.
Well, and Frasier did more than any of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Frasier ends up with his own show eventually, and way more in terms of the guts of that show. So a better character on Cheers.
But as someone that watched a lot of Cheers, especially on syndication, I was never like, oh, I can't wait to see what they do with Frasier this week.
Right. I'm going to take you at your words here, the words you actually typed. I'm going to sell it because Frasier is a better character than both of them. More beloved? No. More fun? No. More iconic? No. But he's a better character than both of them because it was more developed. It eventually ended up in its own show. Plus, they rebooted the show years later after that. So I'll sell it that way, but I totally get what you're doing here. Norm and Cliff they're like the Muppet guys, really. They're like Waldorf and Statler level, badasses in terms of that. But I'll say
who's the number one character on Cheers all time? Is it Sam?
It's got to be Sam.
It has to be Sam.
I think it's got to be Sam.
Okay.
Sam's the number one.
So who's number? Oh, so if Sam and either of the two women, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we take them off, or if you take Sam out, it's definitely one of the women, either Shelly or Kirsty.
Probably, yeah.
So then, who's the second male character behind Sam? I'm just curious because I've never thought about this before.
Right. As far as if you're going to go full run of the show, it's either, God, do either Coach or Woody?
I don't think so.
Rise to that level.
About the three that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's one of these three. Full run of the show, I'd say it's Frasier, but my gut wants to say it's Norm or Cliff.
Well, is the reaction yesterday and today the evidence that maybe it is Norm?
It may be, but again, there's that Norm.
Man, he died, and I saw videos of montages of him walking into the bar, and everybody's saying Norm.
Yes,
within minutes, it was like, oh, here's the greatest hits, and I wonder if we'll get that with the other two.
I think for the question you're asking, I think Norm is the answer. Yes, just as far as you're asking about an icon question. You're asking like most well-known fame. It's a fame sort of question. What do people think of after Sam? And I think it might be Norm.
I feel bad for not saying this earlier. The answer is Carla, right? Like she's the number one.
Carla's up there. Yeah, Carla's up there too.
She's the number one side character.
Well, that's why the whole bar staff, right? You got Sam, but then you have Sam and Carla, and then you get the coach at first, and then Woody's later, and there's a lot of that, man. That show had so much to it. That's really interesting.
Okay. All right, I'm done. Those are my 5.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. We'll get you. Hey, Max, I see that super chat. We'll get there. In fact, let's cleanse before my buy or sell. Let's hit this super chat. $9.99, Max. Maybe the 2025 Sugar Bowl, but not the 2026 Cotton Bowl. Poor coaching and not enough faith in the offensive line is why we couldn't score from the 2-yard line with the 100. Huh?
He's saying 100%.
Yeah, no, I got that part, but maybe the 25 Sugar Bowl? What? But
I don't know what that means.
26 Cotton Bowl. I'm not understanding what those dates are referencing. Okay. Yeah. Poor coaching, not enough faith in the offensive line. All right. Max, thank you for that. All right. Let's get a little buy or sell going on this side. Catch. I'll take it one step further with you and see if you'll bite. Buy or sell. You believe in your soul that if Arch starts in 2024, Texas wins a national championship.
So that's too strong.
Okay.
In my soul, no. But do I think that it's possible that they win that game against Ohio State and thus probably do become the national championships? Absolutely. But I don't believe in my soul.
Yeah. Because certainly as we watched, you had that feeling whoever won that semi was going to beat.
I believe in my soul if Colt McCoy doesn't get hurt in the Rose Bowl, Texas beats Alabama.
You're one of those. A lot of Texas fans have that in their soul.
I was in the stadium that night, man. Yeah. It was happening. And then it wasn't. Yeah. And then those are the shakes. It happens that way.
All right, Catch. Buy or sell. Oklahoma City wins the title.
I'm going to go buy. It's a funky NBA conference finals. 3 teams that haven't ever won and one that hasn't won since the early 70s.
Isn't it wild? I kind of like it. I like this young blood thing because I'm about the ring club. Nobody's in the ring club. Think about it. None of the stars have rings. That's crazy.
But you know how I feel about this is the way I feel about golf and tennis majors. It's good.
Right.
Until you get to the end. And then it's a little bit like the NCAA tournament too. We love those upsets, but we do get bored of Tulsa versus Seton Hall in the Elite Eight. And it's wouldn't it actually been better if Kentucky and Duke had won their games?
Right. The good news here is hopefully there's enough talent with those guys that maybe they start to develop their name.
But I hate it when a season's over and it doesn't feel historical. Like if a you know.
Yeah, but I mean that's the
I'm
year.
just-
That's what
I'm
it
just
is.
saying, that's just me. That's just me.
Did you see the stat that this will be the first ever run of 7 different champions in the NBA?
No,
7 years in a row, 7 different champions. They've never had that happen.
I didn't even realize that. That's
I
wild.
didn't. I saw the stat the other night and I'm like, holy crap, that's a great stat. Yeah.
Wow.
7 years in a row with a different, because you think about just all the Lakers, Celtic,
Yeah.
throw in the Spurs, all the Bulls. I mean, there's just so many different things. So we'll see. Eastern Conference Finals start tonight. The
Who are
damn
you rooting
Pacers.
for?
The Pacers might win the whole damn thing. I'm rooting for Oklahoma City. I could really deal with anybody. I'm rooting for Oklahoma City, and I really don't care in the East.
There's a part of me that would like to see the Knicks do it just so that New York could lose its freaking mind.
Yeah. I could be happy for them because they're iconic-ish, but they're not really iconic. Like, because you said they won it in the early 70s.
They're the most iconic. They're the Boston Red Sox before Boston won the championship.
Yeah, but
It's like all you do is hear them talk about how great they are, and it's like, dude, you haven't won since Babe Ruth. Shut up.
But think about this. Here's the gift. Either they're going to win this series and go to the finals, and then you're going to hear all that excitement. And maybe you're right. They get to ultimately win it. Can you imagine if the Pacers take them out again? These Pacers, the Tyrese Halliburton Pacers.
Hey, put some respect on their names.
Wow. No, and I think they might be the best team of the 4. Like when
Oklahoma City's the best team.
When Indiana
But they
clicks,
still have to
man.
do it.
I think, when Indiana gets going, I don't know if there's anybody better, but I agree with you. I think it is Oklahoma City. If they both play their best, if that's the final, I think Oklahoma City wins it. Yeah. But Indiana's damn good too. All right, Cats, let's get to that other sport. The NHL is down to 4 teams. You can name 2 of them. Buy or sell?
Buy.
Come on.
The Dallas Stars are in it, and
they are in it.
They're playing the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, well done. Well done. Got the matchup and everything.
On the other side of the bracket, it is
come on.
Well, Toronto just got knocked out by oh my God. I can see the damn logos. I was literally looking at the playoff bracket yesterday. Just tell me. Columbus?
Carolina. No, Florida and Carolina.
Florida's the one that I couldn't remember. I should have known Florida.
You did it, though. You got the half hour required of you. All right, Catch, buy or sell, birthday time. Ricky is 48 today. Happy birthday to Ricky Williams. When you die, he will be the best college football running back you ever saw live.
I'm going to go buy.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of, I've seen some pretty amazing players live.
I'm assuming you never got to see like Barry Sanders live.
Not live. And I thought of Barry and was like, well, I never saw Barry live.
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen an Oklahoma State game back then with Barry, but I never did.
No doubt. Yeah. I almost feel, it's funny. I think I feel about Ricky the way that people feel about Earl. The people that saw Earl play feel like everybody else just missed out.
Yeah, I agree.
You didn't get to see that.
I agree.
And Ricky, the more the game is played, the more Ricky didn't seem outlandishly freakish in real time when it was happening. He felt like Superman, but he felt like that's what the position, that's what you were expected to be if you were a great running back. Was kind of, you're the best player on the field by a wide margin, and we don't see that a lot anymore. It's been a long time since I've watched a game, and I've been like, oh, the best player on the field every time out is this guy, and he'll do 5 things in this game that will remind you of why he's that guy. And Ricky was just, I don't think there's a real appreciation for the pounding that guy took, and that he could stay healthy and so versatile and so dynamic and so fresh, no matter how late in the season it was. That guy played well and his best football late. Aggie fans will know that. Like, that dude did not wear out by the end of November's. And,
no, he did not.
He did not officially.
No, he did not.
I mean, even when he did the banquet circuit, he showed up fat against Mississippi State. and still
Dump trucks.
punished them.
God, just unbelievable stuff, man. Happy birthday to
He
Ricky
had the
today.
Heisman Circuit 20 on his tummy, and it just didn't matter. They just pulverized Mississippi State that day. So
happy 48 to Ricky. One more birthday for you, Catch, and we'll be done. The notorious B.I.G. would have been 53 today. How about that? Ricky and Biggie share a birthday. Rest in peace to the great Biggie. For you, he's top 10 all time, and he's on the Mount Rushmore of East Coast rap.
I mean, you'd have to say bye to that.
Okay.
Um,
From what I know of you, you wouldn't put him all the way to Mount Rushmore of all time, correct?
no, I don't love him like that.
Okay.
And
But
so you know that about me. But my list is probably pretty unconventional.
So Biggie's like what, 6 to 8, somewhere in there, kind of in the top 10, back into the top 10.
I don't have any problem slotting him in that territory. To me, it's like I don't know that I view him as a 6-star. So my Mount Rushmore is a 6-star, but I got no problem calling him a 5-star. Right? I don't mean to be insulting with. For me personally, there are guys that I would rank ahead of him that I prefer more.
Here's a clarifying question I never thought I would get to ask. So the notorious B.I.G. is a super blue chip, certainly for you.
Yes.
Okay, good. Fair enough. Happy birthday to the memory of Biggie. Listen to a little Biggie today if you get a chance. All right, Catch. That is buy or sell. Before we are done, the only thing I need you to do is tell people about Rogue Shop and what they can do for you and them and all kinds of things. Did you use a little Rogue Shop to get a little relaxation the last few days?
Maybe. Maybe yes, for sure. Look, you want to feel better. Like, that's the bottom line. They are Texas' home for legal CBD, THC, and more, but that's just rhetoric to make you feel better. They make anxiety better. They make pain better. They make sleeplessness better. They make the ability to relax better. So there are just, it's just better. Makes you feel better. Scan that QR code. Use that promo code OrangeBloods. Get hooked up today. And get some product. This is going to generally make your life a little bit better. That's what this is all about, right? We work so hard so that we can feel so good and life doesn't have to be such a struggle, and Rogue Shop can help make life better. It's as simple as that.
There you have it. All right. Shout out to Rogue Shop. Anything else, Catch, we need to hit before we get out of here?
Nope.
All right. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and getting your notifications. There's a big piece of information coming up in a second. But first, let me tell you about all the great programs coming up. Football with Friends at 6. Tonight on The Outsiders, we're talking rule changes because they are keeping the tush push like Catch talked about. Your 5 favorite rule changes that you would make in any sport. We'll have Chance Mock do that and see what he does with it with the Mock 5, top 5.
That's a great off-season topic.
I mean, I thought I literally woke up today like, what the hell are we going to talk about? And I'm like, wait, NFL meetings. Chance is a Bills freak. Let's do it. Old Fashioned at 9 tomorrow. And also, how about this? Here's how good of a boss Jeff Ketchum is. Jeff Ketchum was going to take the week off of the show, but then he got so revived and refreshed. He tells me today, hey, you know what? Whoever was going to step in Thursday and Friday, tell him I've got it. So we got Catch tomorrow and Friday. That's how good of a boss he is. He's letting Jason and Cody, have their regular days to finish the show. So we'll be back tomorrow for a normal as we can be, House Divided on a Thursday. And if you're out there, Aaron Murray or Joel Klatt or Chris Sims or whoever, if y'all could say something about Arch between now and then, we would really, really appreciate it.
We wouldn't hate you.
No, we would not hate you at all. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and getting your notifications. Thanks for all y'all's support. Everybody have a great Wednesday. We are House Divided. Take care.